This is everything I'm going to need for my recipe. Cup of coffee. I'm gonna need a 1 cup measuring cup. I'm gonna need a 1 cup liquid measuring cup. Salt. My sourdough. Beef tallow. And organic all-purpose flour. Okay, I start by pouring 1 cup of water. And this is not going to be an exact recipe. What you're going to want to do, we can pour this into the bowl. Start with that. So you don't want a super hydrated dough. Next we get our sourdough. What you want from the dough is for the dough to be just barely sticky. You don't want it overly sticky, but you just want the dough barely sticky. So right here we have a super fluffy sourdough starter, and we got a lot of it. So I want to use a lot of it this time, and I want this to be a very fluffy batch. But the more you add, the more you're going to have to compensate for flour. So it's just a trial and error of how many times you're familiar with this, and you'll get the hang of it the more that you make this type of bread. There's nothing wrong with following a recipe exactly, but this recipe isn't going to be exact. So we're going to start by pouring a lot of this in here, because I want to use up a lot of the sourdough. And for my sourdough starter, I couldn't find any whole grain wheat flour, so I've actually been using rye flour that I get, Bob's Red Mill's rye flour, and I'll mix it in with the white flour, and that adds a load of yeast. It actually adds a lot of nutrient value to it. So for this step, I don't like using metal with plastic. So I have this rubber spatula, and I'm gonna mix this in to get this sourdough starter mixed in with the water. That way you have all that starter bacteria, the good bacteria, right? Liquefied, and that spreads throughout all the dough. And at this point, when it's pretty much mixed, I'm gonna add a few pinches of salt. And that's good. That's all I want. You don't want too much salt, or it can be damaging to the bacteria. You just want to add enough to flavor it, bring out all those notes. So, and like I said, I like using, because when you use metal, you tend to get like microplastics, and I don't want those microplastics. So I use either rubber or plastic on plastic, and that's good for me. All right, so now that we have that all mixed up pretty well, this is going to be a very simplistic ingredient recipe. I am going to add the flour next. So I'm going to grab 1 cup of flour if I can. As you can see, I'm not doing this very specific. I'm not leveling off my cup, and that's on purpose because I am going to test this and make sure I get it to the consistency I want to. Like I said, this is not a perfect recipe. This is 1 cup, and then I'm gonna add another cup. Here's another reason why it's not a perfect recipe, and that's because the sourdough can be at different ratios of water. So I'm just trying to feel out the dough to make sure it works out right. So far we only have water, sourdough, salt, and flour that we've added. And the sourdough consisted of white flour and rye. So those are the only ingredients that I have in here so far. Oh, I forgot. We have to add one more ingredient to this. This is the beef tallow. I like adding the beef tallow because I have a very low sugar diet, and fat is my fuel and keeps me very full. And yeah, so you want your tallow to be definitely room temperature. You want it to be soft because when you go to mix it up, it's going to be easier to incorporate into the dough. If you have tallow that's been sitting in the fridge and it's hard, then it's going to be very hard to try and mix that up. You have to like wait for the dough to rest and then come to temperature and then mix it up. So I'm going to go ahead and mix this up real quick. We'll be right back. As you can see, this is what the dough looks like after a minute of mixing, and it's very sticky, and I don't want it this sticky. So I'm going to try mixing it up before I add more flour to it and see what happens. If anything, you want your dough to be more sticky than you do dry, because if it's too dry, then you have to add water, and that doesn't work out very well. Adding flour from after it's sticky is easier than trying to add water after it's dry, if that makes any sense. You want it more sticky than dry at first. That way you can work out the lumps. You don't want to add too much flour at once when you're trying to make it the consistency that you want, because the flour will eventually soak up all the water that's remaining in there. And this is what I was talking about, having it more sticky than wet, because if you add flour to it, it's so much easier to handle than it would be trying to add water to it and then trying to mix it in. It's just so hard trying to add water after it's already too dry. If it's too sticky, then that's fine, because you can always add flour and it gets easier. That way I can like literally pick up this dough and start kneading it and mixing it. And I can add flour so it doesn't stick. That flour creates like this barrier to help it not be so sticky. And you can see how sticky it is, but it's not sticking to my hand or the bowl. And that's because that flour makes like a barrier so it's not sticking to everything. Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and knead this up a bit and then show you what it looks like. You're gonna wanna knead this bread a lot, because the more you knead it, the easier it's going to be, the easier it's going to fluff up when you go to cook it. You want the gluten to really be worked, because that's what's gonna create those air pockets later on when we go to cook it. All right, guys, that dough is way too sticky. You're definitely gonna add like another half cup at least to this, but this is like the consistency you want. See, I can stick my finger in here for like a second or two and it sticks, but it doesn't completely stick. It's sticky, but it doesn't stick too much. The consistency you're looking for is like Play-Doh, like just like Play-Doh. And then when I pick it up from the bowl, it doesn't stick. See, I can knead it, but it doesn't stick to the bottom of the bowl. That's the consistency you're looking for. You're more than likely not going to be able to over knead this dough, so just knead it until you can't knead anymore. So now that I'm done kneading, I'm gonna take my lid and I'm gonna cover it, and we're gonna let this sit for 1 to 2 hours. And we will be back and show you what happens after that. Okay, so this is what they look like. I had to roll them up into these little balls, and I'll show you what it looks like when I go to roll it out, because I only have one hand. So press them out a little bit, and then I will roll them out. So I do my first roll out like this, and then this side, both sides are pretty sticky, so I try to get some flour on them so I can roll them out, and then I flip it sideways, but on the other side, and then do that side. And that is pretty much how I want it. Then I take tortilla, and then I take both my hands and kind of play with it so I can dust off the flour so I can go to cook it. Okay, so at this point you're gonna want your pan rolling pretty hot. Your cast iron skillet is the best. So I have my dough here, and I'm gonna flip this over to my pan as flat as I can get it. And yeah, we're gonna let this roll for a bit. When it starts bubbling is when you know that you can flip it. My pan will be hot. This is in real time. Almost starting. And it doesn't even stick. That's how you want it. It's a light, fluffy tortilla that just doesn't stick. Never sticks. So the bubbles are pretty big, so I'm gonna flip that over. We got a little bit of browning. We'll probably flip it one more time. I do that so it creates steam. The more tortilla surface area can get to the hot pan, the more steam it creates on the inside. I mean, this is naan, really. This isn't even a tortilla, this is naan. Flatbread. Make it a bit more crispy on that side. You can see it like really raising up. I've had them puff up into puff balls before too, and that was really cool. I guess it's all about consistency or texture or how much you're moving it. And yeah, that's about good. That's where I want it. I don't really want it crispy, but still floppy like that, and it makes the perfect piece of naan bread. It's really good if you take some butter and just melt some butter right on top of it while it's still hot, and put a little bit of salt on top of it. Oh, it's so delicious like that. And that is how I make my biblical sourdough flatbread. Alright guys, if you like the video, please give the video a thumbs up and comment down below whether you guys have tried this recipe. And if you like this content, please subscribe. Thanks guys. Bye.